I'm really not a leader if I take on one more thing. I'm a leader if I get what's coming and get it to the proper person who can take it. That's leading.
Welcome to the Crucible Project podcast. The Crucible Project is a nonprofit organization committed to creating a world of men and women who live with integrity, grace, and courage, helping them to fulfill their God-given purpose. This podcast will discuss important and sometimes difficult topics while delivering practical life applications with men and women who are currently practicing this work. We are igniting Christ-like change in men and women through experiences of radical honesty and grace.
Hello and welcome to the Crucible Project podcast. I'm your host, Tim Rush, and we're talking about leadership. With us today is Byron Myers, the men's ministry leader in the Crucible Project. And Byron, thank you for being here. This is all about me wanting to know more about leadership and how to be a better leader. And this is a blessing to me to sit with men who excel in this role. So to begin, Byron, what should the listeners know about you to start?
Yeah, well, I appreciate being here, Tim. I've had a pretty interesting journey and career. I've always been in ministry, but not in a church. I have 30 years as an educator in a private Christian school, as a teacher, a coach, and eventually an administrator. And loved Crucible work. Went in 2009 in October in Brownwood, Texas. As I grew in this work, I saw opportunities to work alongside the corporation, so to speak, the organization, and became the men's ministry leader, I believe, in 2020. I had been doing leader development since 2017.
So you took on the new role in 2020. Nothing difficult about that transition, I'm sure, in that period of time.
No, especially since we also moved from Midland, Texas to Granbury, Texas, which is 4 hours apart. Yeah, so left our home, left our church, left our whole world we'd been in for many years. So no, nothing difficult about that.
Nothing hard in that transition. Well, I'm also drawn to the fact 30 years working in a Christian school and growing up in a Christian school, kindergarten through 12th grade. I know that's its own culture in and of itself with its own pitfalls. So what a place to begin a leadership journey, which, of course, your journey wouldn't have begun there. So this podcast, Byron, is because I think there are a lot of people like me who want to be better leaders. Whether they have a title or it's just positions and friendships, relationships, there are places in their life where leadership is needed, and they know they can do it better. There's better next steps, but sometimes we get these messages that tell us we're not the one. Somebody else could do it better. And we look at people who do this well and we think, oh, they're just natural. If I were more like them. But I know that you have a backstory, you have an origin story where you had to fight through messages and you had to fight through other people's judgments and your own judgments. So looking back on your journey, at what point did you turn around and realize, man, people are following me?
Yeah, well, somewhere young, I don't remember, junior high, high school, maybe early high school, a couple of people had put a hand on my shoulder, which this is a story often many people hear, you'll be a great leader someday. But nobody said, and here's the manual on leadership. So I muddled through. And on top of that, my parents divorced when I was about 11, 10, 11, 12, going through that. And the way Dad set me up is I had to lead in some way with no power to lead. So I was having this rebellious, fighting, disrespectful towards authority type of attitude for a bit. I went to the same Christian school I actually worked for, and just thankful that I had that. If I don't know if I would have had that, I might not be the leader I am today. They took care of the knucklehead. So I started that journey somewhere in that mid-high school range, leading sports teams that I was playing for, doing things at Christian camps and taking on some kind of small leadership role. And I got the energy out of it, but I also had this look at other people. Oh, I want to be like that as a leader. And I did a lot of mimicking, not modeling
Mm.
necessarily, but mimicking. So I was a parrot many times as a leader. I would just repeat what I heard a great leader say, and it didn't fit, right?
Mhm.
It didn't always work. So it took a while for me to learn how to model up in my older, older adult. In the late 20s, I was still mimicking a lot, but 30s and 40s, I began to understand the difference. I have a leadership style, I have a leadership gift, but it doesn't look like your leadership gift, or somebody else that I admire. And so the modeling and the authentic leadership is where it started to come on board for me. And then coming into Crucible, it really turned the corner for me to understand, oh, I am this. I can take on some of these leadership traits of other people, but I am still this. I think you and I talked about it at some point. I think about how when David went to go fight Goliath and Saul put his armor on David, put his tunic, gave him his helmet, his sword, and David walked around and said, I can't fight in these. Took it all off, went to what he knew, his sling and his stone, his experiences of his own, and took that out there with the power of God and fought the giant. How many of us would actually try to fight with Saul's armor on? Yeah, and so that's where I am in my journey now is understanding and helping other leaders see you don't have to wear the Tim Rush cloak, the Byron Myers cloak to lead. You need to be you with these leadership skills.
And you remember a time when it felt risky to take off the armor that somebody else was putting on you and going in as a leader as Byron instead of somebody else's
Every day.
persona?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, because especially in that area of expectation.
Hmm.
Somebody has an expectation with me in a leader position, and I may go out and venture on something, and it might not go well. I have an idea from my own head, not mimicking somebody else's, and it might not go well. And I don't handle that failure. I don't accept my own failure very well, and so I don't handle that failure very well. So that's risky when I step out on some of those. It's also risky when I do it alone. If I talk with other leaders before I push it out there, I have a better guide. But if I try to do it alone, then I typically don't do very well.
So I've heard you say the phrase, you were given the keys to the kingdom. And I believe this is the context of your dad
Hmm.
leaving home. Kind of, you're now the man of the house. But the story I tell myself is in that moment, you felt alone, that there weren't other leaders to come alongside. So, how did that sense of powerlessness, having the reins to something big, in front of you, but not having other leaders to walk with you in that. What do you carry from that experience?
Oh yeah, wow. It was a sense of powerlessness for sure, and it fed my anger. It was a
Mm.
good portion of the angry man that I became when I was told take care of your mother and your brother. Well, how does a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old take care of mother and brother? Best he can. And then every time he tries, he's hit in the face. And so there was a lot of anger, a lot of tussle and push. So I did feel alone. Felt like, and I'm not worthy. Who am I to think this? Yet I was fighting. Who are you to tell me what to do? Right. So I was having this back and forth that I had to work with. I'm so grateful for some coaches and teachers, both men and women, who poured into me and gave me rope, were patient, I didn't get a lot of "you should have done it this way" from them as much. Some, but not from the shaming point of view anyway. There was guidance as I went along, and I was a late bloomer. I'm a soaker, so there are things now at my age because of my experience you could give me, and I can run with it pretty fast. But there are a lot of things still that have to develop. I have to go through some experiences to know that this is the direction, this is the way it has to go. And so I had all of that going on in waves as I grew in my leadership and people responding to me in a positive way rather than bristling or pushing back.
Yeah. So how does that play out today? Being a leader of leaders, training leaders, how does that echo from your past live
Oh
today?
yeah. When I think I've given the most brilliant advice in the whole wide world and it's not listened to and used, I'm pretty frustrated. Like I just told you that. And then I have to step back and recognize they're on a different leader journey. But yeah, that plays in. And then the initiative. If I gained anything, I gained initiative through that time. And it's not healthy to say if it's going to be, it's up to me, which is kind of what I lived my life for a good portion of. I just carry one more thing. It's just easier for me to do it. But I don't fault that I got the initiative growth from it. And now I'm learning, okay, I'm really not a leader if I take on one more thing. I'm a leader if I get what's coming and get it to the proper person who can take it. That's leading, um, not carrying it as one more thing that I can do, and I'm the smartest man in the world.
So there are sometimes when you're training leaders that they do things differently because their personalities or their leadership skills are different than yours. And then I'm sure there are times when people don't follow your lead out of less than noble reasons. And so, how do you prepare yourself for those times when it feels personal, or it feels like you're leading the best you can, but the followers aren't being helpful? Like, how do you take care of yourself for those moments?
Mm. Yeah, one, the school world prepared me for a lot of this. You deal with that many personalities every day, and stand in a space of student, especially an administrator, student, teacher, parent, superintendent, and manage all of that. I think my shift comes on pretty quick. Another gifting that I had was this. I've always been an attribution person. I guess because of my wounding, I've always wondered, why are they acting like they act? Why are they choosing what they're choosing? Why are they doing what they're doing? And so there's a piece of me that has, it depends on the message, it depends on how it's brought to me, but I typically don't react too quick because I got to find out where they're coming from. And I think that's part of that gift. Now, again, it depends on what it is. So it wasn't very recent. A man questioned our instructions being thorough enough. If it were in the protocol, I would have blank. And that hit me really quick. I took that personal because I was pretty certain it was in there, but maybe it wasn't. And I heard this, I'm failing, and it hit me really fast and came on really quickly. And I reacted, unhealthy. And thankful because of this work, I also turned it around in 30 seconds and said, that was a poor reaction to what you said. I hope I answered the question. I try to prep. I'm a proactive person. I try to be proactive, especially in relational. And so I try to prep on a regular basis. I think I've done that ever since I was young.
If you could go back and talk to your younger leader self, this is two part. What sorts of advice would you give, and what sort of blessing would you give? What sort of encouragement would you tell a man? Hey, you may feel insecure here, but you are really rocking this.
Yeah, I've worked hard. I'm gonna go reverse on the blessing. I've worked hard at trying to pick up good characteristics in a person and help them see how it's applying, even if they're not doing it in their mind correctly. Yeah, but look at the intent you had behind it. Look at your heart you had behind it. You can do this. There are some adjustments. And then advice is, well, one of them, there's a line from John Maxwell, who's a great leadership guy. Know thyself. If you know how you're going to react, if you know your gifts, if you know your strengths, you even know your weaknesses, if you're aware of those, it helps you navigate into the leadership. The second piece of advice would be initiative. Just take initiative. Oh, too many men who want to be leaders stand off in the woods, off on the corner, right on the edge, and say, "Does anybody see me?" And then they're resentful that nobody saw them, but they didn't take any initiative to step in, right? Whatever the fear is, and take initiative. Roy Wooten, our executive director, says it well. Oftentimes, he said, "I'm one who builds the parachute on the way out of the plane," and I wouldn't push that far, but sometimes you have to step into something risky and get your nose cut off so that you can learn where your limitations are and where you can stretch and grow. So yeah, knowing yourself and taking initiative are two big pieces that I would start with for somebody.
Well, now it just feels like you're reading my journal. 'Cause you're talking to me here, and I've mentioned this in past podcasts that I have that recurring message that says you don't belong at the adult table. Go join the little kids at the card table. And so whenever I see that big step, it doesn't take anything. I mean, just the hint, somebody look at me sideways, and maybe they had gas, but I take it as them looking at me going, "Hey, don't you belong at the kid table?" So I love that message of take the risk, go for it. But man, that's hard to do.
No, it is.
I wish I were the type of guy that built the parachute on the way out of the airplane. That for the listeners, if anybody listening hasn't done a Crucible weekend, when you go on a weekend, there's someone like Byron who is leading the weekend, and they've got a team around them, but he's the man that the buck stops here. And Byron has done this. Is it fair to say more than 100 times?
Yeah.
Close to 100 times. And then there's guys like me who's done it just north of 30. On a weekend, I look at Byron, and I mean, there's always a curveball that comes up. There's always something weird that happens. And I look at Byron, and Byron goes, "Yeah, I've seen this before. Here's what we do." Or I've seen something similar. And so I look at it and go, "Oh my goodness, I will never have that sort of experience, that sort of confidence." And equally, I'm not Byron. Like my leadership just doesn't look like Byron. And so there's part of my voice that says, you would be a better leader if you were just like Byron. The silliness of that is, what if I were the one training you, if the roles were reversed, and I expected you to lead like Tim Rush? Man, what sort of things would we miss if we were trying to fit you into a Tim Rush mold? So I wonder, how in the world did you get the confidence to step into the Byron Myers mold and know that this is how God is leading you? This is how God has made you and prepared you, and you can step into it with confidence.
Yeah, you and I have talked a little bit about all success is a lagging indicator. I can't remember the
Yes.
author's name right away, but the idea that in that moment of decision, there were a lot of failures and successes, experiences that just built to that moment where you make that choice. And I think of the passage where it says all things work to the good for those who love the Lord. I think they run hand in hand. There's a spirit led peace. But for me, I would say where I gained mine in some of my experiences. So it's all experience based. And in a school, we have to pivot quickly. We have to learn to pivot quickly. And so I learned to pivot quickly in the education, but probably most of it came from my athletic coaching. Our athletic director at the time, a very good friend of mine, and one of the things he would teach his players, bad things are going to happen in a game. What are you going to do? And I took that on as I coached 14 to 18-year-old girls to play softball. And you played the diamond sports, love the diamond sports. There are all kinds of things that can happen in a game, and you have to adjust, and you have to adjust quickly. You have to have short memory. And training girls to have that short memory, and then in the midst of something not going well, right? Coaching third, the girl flails at two balls that she shouldn't have been swinging at, and she turns to look at me instead of covering my logo. I'm the calm presence saying you have this, and so those are just some, but it's experiences like that, and then doing 100 weekends or so. It's just dealing with the human interaction of people and how they're going to react and decision making. Yeah, it just all culminates. And my answer is not always correct either. There's always somebody who has even a better answer than I do.
So let me ask you about, how do you take care of yourself? Because when you walk in the room, you're the leader. And I'm sure that there are corners of your life where you weren't appointed leader, you weren't supposed to be the leader, somebody else was. And you walk into the room and they kind of look at you as if you're the one that will now say, okay, let's all get started.
Yeah.
So how do you guard yourself from taking on everything that comes by?
Yeah, that's a challenge because I don't go into very many situations where I don't set myself up as the one on top. And I don't do it in a overbearing way. I may sit and listen, and then as I speak in, it just automatically they can see I have some knowledge. But I do set myself up in a few places. There's a group at church that I joined, and I'm probably 10 years the youngest at the closest. And everybody's at least 10 to 15 years older than me. We even have a couple of men in their 80s. One of the leaders said, "Oh, you ought to be our group leader." I said, "That's not why I joined this group. I didn't join this group to lead. I've joined the group to be in my eldership. Somebody else is leading me." Other places would be on retreats where I'm on the leader team, but I'm not the leader. And you've experienced this even as an apprentice. I give the decision to the leader. I'm not it. I've learned based off of Saul and David again, when David was being chased by Saul, and he had two opportunities to kill Saul. And in both cases, he said, "I will not lay my hand on the Lord's anointed." And there's a learning in that. To be in authority, I must learn how to be under authority, which I was not very good at unless they demanded respect in a good way. I was not very good at that as a teenager. My coaches, they just knew how to command respect without saying respect me. If they said respect me to me, they're done. They were out. Right? That was my rebellious part. But to learn to be under that authority, yeah, I do that. And then I have groups and coaching. I have a couple of coaches that I may call and I need some work. I do my own personal underneath when something's going on for me. I can see how I'm reacting to situations. I need some guidance. Or a group of men where we're all somewhat equal in leadership, so nobody leads, but we all guide each other. Yeah, I have a couple of groups like that I meet
So if someone was to lead Byron Myers, step one would be, don't say respect me.
in. Yeah.
What else would be, what would you look for that you would go, okay, I can follow this guy?
Character. Yeah, character's huge. Competence is huge. And are they purposeful? Right? Is there a direction? But yeah, character and competence are really, really big for me.
Is there something that would let you know they have character?
Well, their integrity. They do what they say they're going to do. I can look at their life and see that they don't have it together, but they pretty much live as themselves, and it's in biblical terms, not word by word scripture terms, but biblical terms. You can tell they're godly. They have fruit. Right? They're not deceptive, manipulative, that sort of thing, right? Yeah, just good character. Yeah, and then competence, just they say it, it happens. They understand what's going on. And if you're in the IT world, you can lead me all day because I suck at that.
So I'm curious for you then, if those are the things that ring for you for men you will follow. When you are leading, how do you handle it when if you make a mistake? And so I assume if that's what stands out for you, then you feel like that's what you have to be for other people. So how do you handle it if you make a mistake and the message comes in, oh, you're less than 100% competent, or your character has a dent in its armor? What comes up for you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of work that I've put into this, and I still have more work to do. I have to one in my own self move away from the shaming messages that come with it. I could easily shame myself out loud, become the martyr, and that's all manipulative too to try to get somebody off my back. So the method I try is take ownership, not defend, but explain what was behind it, and then see where we can go forward. Make amends if I need to make amends. Get other people's advice if that didn't work. How should we go from here? Yeah, there's some humility in that that I did not have as a young man. But now I'm old enough to know that I've forgotten more than I learned.
It's weird with character and with competence too. It seems to me like whenever a leader shares, and maybe it's not with the whole company or the whole church or the whole group, but with the leaders close to them, when they share a mistake that they made, for me, my sense of their character actually grows,
Yeah,
because they're owning a mistake. Even with competency, I know I can trust this guy. If he made a mistake and he's open about it. But boy, that sure does feel risky as a leader to do that.
yeah, it does. I'm fortunate. I'm actually under a pastor in our current church who is probably the most vulnerable that I've ever heard. Even yesterday, just talking about ways he did it and that didn't come across correctly. He owns it, or he just talks about what he's learned out of it. It's pretty amazing.
Wow. Any advice for other leaders that are wanting to jump out of the plane and build that parachute as they go? Um, what would you say?
Yeah, I made this mistake as a young coach, athletic coach. Spent way too much time fixing our deficiencies and didn't praise them and honor and continue to work on the things we were good at. And I got better at that as a coach. Then I had to turn it on to myself. I spent way too much time in my life trying to fix the things that I'm not or that I couldn't get right. And I wasn't building on the strengths that I have, which would be developing and equipping and helping others see themselves well. And so that shift, I've made some. I'm not complete because I'm still fixing problems, but I've moved towards this shift of I'm just going to work more out of my strengths, make fun of my whole IT lack thereof, and get somebody to help me. Turn things over to people that I just can't do. They may be areas that I might could figure it out, but I really should be directing towards all my strengths and working out of those. So that's where I would say know your weaknesses and work on the character weaknesses and the messaging that goes with that. But the main thing is stay in your strength and find those places where your strengths are needed.
That's good. I had another Crucible leader ask me those sorts of questions one time of strengths and weaknesses and which one are you focusing on more. And even now, while you're saying it, I feel that sense of riskiness of, and I don't know what this is about specifically, but protecting my backside. There's a riskiness in not making sure all of that is cleaned up so that nobody will be able to say, throw it or shoot arrows at weaknesses that I carry.
Yeah.
Man, that's hard to trust. Okay, so Byron, one last question. What is going on for you? Is there something happening right now in your life that you're like, man, this is my next step in my leadership journey?
Yeah, it's this overcoming this fear of I'm not meeting somebody's expectations, and it's perceived. I mean, it's this perception that somebody has an expectation of me. They're either not telling me, or they've told me and I've missed it. Am I behind? Am I meeting expectations? Yeah, there's this feeling that one, either they can't approach me because I'm too much, I'm too big, and they won't tell me, but they'll tell me when it's right at the end, when they're at their end, and they say, enough, that's it, I'm done, you're out. And so I have that I'm wrestling with. I think it ties to how my dad set us up when he left, right? Asked me about the possibility of divorcing mom. I asked him, would he? He said no. But then several months later, he drops the bombshell that he's going to divorce mom. And I mean, I'm rocked at that point. So there may be something in that I've got to tie it to and do some work around. But
yeah,
I am still wrestling with, am I meeting the expectations of you on this podcast right now? It's there. It's in the back of my mind on a regular basis.
Man, thanks for sharing that. I feel like that's where I live. Like, what are people thinking that they're not telling me? And I want them, well, part of me wants them to tell me.
Yeah.
So a lot of self-deprecating humor and that sort of thing, because I don't know what they're saying and I want to be on their side. So thank you for sharing that. That's one of those things I assume real leaders wouldn't have a question like that. So that helps me in my leadership journey. Thank you. Well, thank you for spending this hour with me. I appreciate it, Byron. Every time we talk, I feel like another door or a window, some sort of peak happens that I get to see. All right, this is a next step in my leadership journey that I can look into and I don't have to be afraid of. So thank you very much, Byron.
You bet. And you're a great leader, Tim. I want you to believe in your own too. So, but thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Byron. Yeah, so if anything that you've heard today stands out to you, notice those around you. And this may be a conversation that you would want to share with them to encourage them in their leadership journey as well. Thank you for being with us, and we hope to be back in your headphones or speakers soon.
For more information about our weekends, please go to thecrucibleproject.org. Or if you're ready to get started on your transformational journey right now, you can connect with one of our Crucible certified coaches for a free 30-minute session at thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. That's thecrucibleproject.org/coaching. If you like what you heard, connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Rate and review wherever you are listening, and don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform. Thank you for listening.